Okay, for this video, I'm just going to go through how to install the BigFix server, which is not to be confused with the BigFix console, which is only installed on Windows. But this server is where all the magic happens, and so I will share how to do that, starting with the prereqs of downloading the file itself from the BigFix website, or you can also download it from Passport Advantage on IBM's website. You can also do a wget by copying the link and just running that command directly on the server that this will be installed on. So once you do that, it's also important, if you have not yet, to have installed a license authorization file. The URL is to get to that is right here, ibm.biz/lmt_license_request. It'll take you to a login page and then to this page. You can download it, and then it needs to be moved to the server that the BigFix server will be installed on. So once you have that, then you can go to your server. In my case, I'm going to use MoveXterm to connect to it and move files around pretty easily. You can see on this left-hand side, I've moved the license authorization file, as well as the TGZ file, which we need to decompress. So to unpackage. So to do that, we'll do tar xbf and then the name of the file, which is server install. So let me do that again. Tar xbf server install. This should just take a few seconds. There we go. Clear my screen. And then we can see we have a new directory. So server installer. So we're gonna go into this server installer, but first I'm going to copy this, or rather I'm going to move the license authorization file into this new directory, and then also into the license directory in that directory. So we'll go into that in a second. So luckily, there are not a lot of files and directories, which makes things a lot easier compared to the DB2 install. But we'll go into the license folder, and you can see that's where it is. So this is what we're going to need to reference pretty soon here as we start the install. So to start the install, we will run this install install.sh file. Forgot the sh. There we go. We're going to select the production option number 2 because option number 1 expires in 30 days. And then we will accept the license agreement with option 1 for the BigFix features components. We're going to select option 7. It's a little bit confusing to explain all of the options, but suffice it to say, if you're going to connect ILMT to BigFix, then you just need 7. You can do 1 if you want to for all components, but 7 is sufficient. We're going to select a single database. Hasn't actually been created yet, so definitely not a replicated one. And then we're going to use a local database, which again has not yet been created. Obviously, DB2 is installed, but there are no tables or anything that are currently active and running. The server's root folder will accept the default. Most of these things are going to be in var opt, so BES server, BS web reports, and then BS client, which won't be defined here, but it keeps everything in a rather organized location. So we'll keep the defaults. For the web report, we won't really use this. We'll just accept the default here. So the database, in the previous database video, we changed this to db2 inst1, and If that was done, then the default can be accepted. And same with the instance owner of db2 inst1. So press enter for that. And then the password that was set during the install of db2. Oops, start the wrong password. There we go. Okay, so now we'll go to configure the db instance. That's part of what we want to do in this install process is just configure it all so that while the BigFix server gets up and running, that the database is up and running with it. So the username here, this is gonna be what we use to log into the BigFix console. So it's very important to write this down. You can change it if you want, doesn't really matter. And then the password, similar to the username, needs to be recorded somewhere so that we can actually use BigFix. And option number 1 and 2 are worded a little bit confusingly, but essentially we're going to choose option 1, even though we do have a production license that we have downloaded. It's really more of, well, I won't go into explaining, but we're going to select option 1, and we're not going to use a proxy, although that can be used, of course. If you select option 2, then you'll have to enter just a couple of configurations for it. Nothing too crazy. The license authorization file we're going to say is here. It's not going to accept the location because the name is not just license authorization with that file extension name. So I'm going to open up a new tab here, and we'll go into this. We'll go into the directory and go into the license directory more specifically. And here we go. So I'm going to just get the full path to make sure that it can find this file, which it did not like me copying that. So let me try to be a little more precise. There we go. And then I can hit tab after just LIC. And there we go. DNS name. So this DNS name is what my VM is. If this needs to be changed in the near future, then you will probably not want to install BigFix because you'll essentially have to reinstall BigFix if you change the server name. Things get pretty messy and break very fast if this name is changed. So hopefully this is a at least mostly permanent name. So the site private key password isn't something you should ever need to use, but set it and record it. We'll choose the min level here for encryption. There's going to be some files that are generated that the clients will use to communicate to the BigFix server. So that's what that is more or less asking about. And then for the license folder, we will keep it in the license folder, or sorry, the license file we'll keep in the license folder. So the request license we want to submit over the internet. Obviously, there's the option 2 for doing it if you don't have internet access. But if you do not have internet access, you should try to get internet access. Otherwise, things will be much more complicated, not only for the install, but really in general. And it's a pretty big pain. So definitely try to have the ports open that are necessary. We'll accept the default there for the encoding thing. This is going to generate a masthead, which is essentially instructions and authorization for the client to communicate to the BigFix server and vice versa. So we will select the default value here. Notice that the server port is 52311. This is something that will need to be open, as mentioned in the previous video. So that should be That should be good. It's they don't really give you much messages while things are running and loading. But unless we get an error message, then we will not try to exit the install process. Although if you can, nothing should break, and you can just, if for whatever reason you need to change your previous option, then just quit the install, and then you can go back and just run the install process again. So for the web reports, I mentioned earlier that we're not going to really use it. So I'm just going to do run with root privileges. It doesn't really matter, especially for ILMT. But notice up here, the license authorization file can only be used once. So if you do go through this install process and then need to install the BigFix server again, you'll need to download a new license authorization file, which should just take 30 seconds. So not a big deal. This is actually an edit. I had to go back and enter the right port number for DB2, which is 25010 for me. It says the default is 50,000, but if you want to check, then the command for that is grep and then db2c underscore db2 inst1 space /etc/services. And here we can see that's running on port 25010. So make sure to try to double check before you enter this value, because this is the last configuration option before it starts the install process. And so if what can happen is sometimes the install process gets pretty far and will populate a bunch of folders and start the databases, or at least try to start the databases. And if there's an error towards the very end, then sometimes you have to go back and uninstall the folders, which is a pretty big pain, and then uninstall the services. So just make sure to double check on this last step. And then you should see a bunch of success messages in green. And if this is what you see at the end, then you know it's finished. The BigFix console is located in this directory, as well as the masthead. Both of these can be found in other ways. The masthead through the port number that the BigFix server is connected to. But you can also get the console from the same BigFix site where we downloaded the BigFix server. But it's nice to have in this location because you can copy both of them, and we'll need them for the console install. But just as a quick confirmation on if you want peace of mind that things are running, then you'll see these new services: BES Web Reports, BES Client, and BES Root Server. And then there's also BES Fill DB service, which probably won't show because there's not much information to enter into the databases yet. But there are two databases that have been created: BFEnt, and then BES Reports, or well, BES Report is what it's called. And so everything is working, and the server's installed. The DB2 is connected, and the next step is to install the console and log into BigFix.